Hello, chat. Just got the YouTube stream live. Sorry about that. I'm running a little bit behind today. I'm actually not feeling the best. I seem to be like really constipated. Not that chat needs to know that, but like just figured it would at least explain why I'm a little lethargic today. Rivals time? It's so funny because I felt like I was planning to take a break this season anyways, and then apparently some of these new team ups are just actually broken and one-shotting people, so I feel like this was a great time to take a break. At least as far as I can tell. It's the weekend. Yes, it is. And boy, what a week it was for me. You guys know I had basically Kiki's mother with us for the first like 4 days of this week. I streamed for you guys yesterday, basically for the first time this week, and I'm streaming again today. And hopefully I'll be able to stream tomorrow, but I don't know. At this point, I may need the day off just to relax, so we'll see. Tomorrow's stream, I'm going to say, is tentative, but I've definitely been at least doing some stuff on the side. I guess Bethesda's union's gonna have like a walkout over some of the firings, which we gotta talk about that. That may be something that we sit down and do here today later in the stream after we get done with some of the FGO analysis and stuff. But first, we gotta play some FGO. So let's get this party started. Type, thank you for the resub, buddy. Again, welcome everybody. Congratulations, it's the end of the week. You guys made it here. We're just gonna kind of be focusing on like still kind of tidying up, completing the JP event, spinning down my AP, and then getting into that analysis like I wanted to do with you guys. I do want to like think about potentially like starting Ordeal Call 2 with you guys. The problem is we obviously have summer coming up on tonight, and I'm trying to think of like, should I do it during summer and just like pop apples or what? Right? Like, so I'm kind of just caught in the middle here a little bit as to like what I want to do and how I want to do it. Hello, Eric. And good evening, Field. Again, I hope everyone's doing well. I know there's not a terrible amount going on in FGO at the moment now, but it's why I still want to go over for you guys the new unit on JP. Potentially roll for him. I didn't put it in the stream title because I'm just not actually sure what I want to do. We'll see. I actually need to look at this new unit. I need to look at the numbers that Avalon sent me and figure out for myself if that's what I want to do. Because obviously JP has an anniversary coming up. JP has basically the summer units, and I think it's like I need to consider how smart it will be for me to either roll here or abstain. Isn't summer like a 60-day event or something crazy? No, the summer event is still the normal time period. It just flows into what we know as Ordeal Call 3. And Ordeal Call 3 is like piggybacking off of it. So it makes it feel like summer's a really long time, even though it technically is not. I ended up appling just to get through the last half of OC2 in one sitting. Have a bunch of golds anyways. How many chapters was OC2 if you happen to remember? I'm just out of curiosity because obviously I did it on JP 2 years ago and I just for the life of me do not remember. 26? That's definitely a lot. Like that's gonna at least be a lot of reading for me to sit down and read through it all. Reading 1100 courts for 11th Annie, surely? Yeah. That would be great if they did that. I would not count on them doing that, though. You can expect that because they were so generous, like 10th Annie, that if anything, this will be a little bit of a dud anniversary for them. I do think, like logic kind of dictates that would be the case, but I think knowing the status of the game, seeing where it is projected, like they kind of have to keep being generous. They kind of have to keep that hype up. I think that's a big problem that they are going to have is that FGO, I think people are content with the current arc of the game. It doesn't mean that people dislike it or anything, but we've talked about this before that like there's a little bit of a like Mexican standoff between the players and the developers. The developers want assurance that the players will continue to play the game before they invest more time and money into it. And players want more assurance from the developers that the game will continue before they continue to invest more time and money into it. So because of that, you have a very weird like guns pointed at each other, like daring each other to flinch type situation. And I think a little bit the devs kind of have to keep that hype up because if they don't, they're naturally asking for players to just not care and not show up. So this is one of those things that I think they don't truly understand at this point. I'd hope for at least 600 or 700. That'd be nice. Need to up their commitment and show more to give us certainty of the future. And I think that's something I've talked about with you guys. This is just it's a weird spot to be in. I don't really envy them in that regard. Okay, so we got Shisho done. Honestly, I'm gonna do the Iskandar one. Iskandar's buff just actually makes Iskandar usable. And it's not like, again, you can't use somebody that doesn't have charge, but I'll be honest, charge is one of the most, like, key things that you can have in the game to be considered to be more usable. Units without charge are going to be pigeonholed into certain roles. Units with charge are going to be very flexible and can adapt. So, to me, it's like, if you're a unit at this stage of the game that doesn't have charge, it's more of a question of when will you get it rather than will you get it. Because I truly believe that it's just kind of an arms race in that point. Like we were talking about Made Alter yesterday, and I think that really just kind of holds true there too. One of the reasons that people will not have a great opinion of Made Alter is simply because she lacks charge. The second she would get some, it would definitely help her out quite a bit. So this is one of those things where I think as you begin to look and you see charge truly is the like gatekeeping feature of the game at this point, and how much charge of it you have depends on how many roles you can fulfill a lot of the time. I think you click Cleo's. Well, if I did, I did. Not like I don't need to do all of these eventually anyways. Maybe that's why NA will not get the website anytime soon. It's possible. Like, I think this is one of those things that, like, if we're not getting the website on NA, I suspect that there is either too much monetary cost or there is too much red tape. The third option that I don't want to consider is that it's done on purpose to not give us a beneficial arrangement. And that seems narrow-minded and foolhardy on their part. So I am not assuming it is the third option. And the reason for that, again, is just because I feel like if that's truly the way they're thinking about an A, we only have so long before like this game dies, because such a approach to the game would be actually very toxic and very manipulative on behalf of the developers, and it will come out if that's like the change in their strategy. So I don't believe it's that. I believe instead it's probably the red tape argument, that it's a little bit too difficult for them to do something that would effectively have to amount to being an international website for purchasing. And there's got to be all sorts of extra considerations and problems with that compared to just a wholly Japanese site where they really only legally have to abide by Japanese rules. So I think like operating the JP site was a lot easier for them. Operating what will be a global site, that will be a problem. This is one of those things where we call NA, but this is one of the things where it truly is a global server. So that could be a little bit more of a problem. Maybe a Google thing, yeah, who knows? It could be Zerebus. I couldn't tell you. I just, like I said, if it's done on purpose, I would assume it's not to fuck over the players, because a little bit, and I've pointed this out before, like one of the reasons for the site is so that the developer gets more profit margins. You guys have seen entirely the whole like argument on Twitter, like excoriating PlayStation for going to physical games, right? Or at least you've heard about it. So Twitter is just slamming PlayStation right now because of that announcement, and it just keeps going and going and going day after day, and it's hilarious, all the memes and stuff that they're doing on it. The whole reason Sony is doing that, and I'm dead serious here, okay? I'm not saying I agree with Sony, but I am saying I understand Sony. And I do think to some degree a shift towards digital games is inevitable. I don't like that. I think we need to have this fight right now, and I think the fight needs to be over consumer rights and ownership. But regardless, I understand why Sony's doing it. And the big reason why Sony's doing it is because Sony's trying to cut out the middleman. Sony doesn't want to keep paying GameStop. Sony doesn't want to keep paying Steam. Sony doesn't want to pay Apple or Google a 30% cut. Sony wants that 30% themselves. And so when you start thinking about that, you start thinking about all of the transactions that Sony has for microtransactions, DLC, selling video games, and you start thinking about some other retailer, some other storefront taking a 30% cut of that margin, naturally any company's gonna want to either reduce or get rid of that if they can. Sony sees a path to get rid of that. That's why they're doing this. It also helps them get rid of the physical supply chain, which naturally causes a whole bunch of processing and shipping fees that they have to deal with. Same thing with marketing and advertisement, as well as the production of packaging and other things that go into that. So if Sony doesn't have to do that, that's just another cost that they save on. Even more profitability for them. So as we look to that, now let's compare that to FGO. Why would FGO set up a website for us to purchase quartz and bind our accounts to? Because that circumvents the other marketplaces. That means that, like, let's say you buy a quartz pack, okay? And let's say you buy it for $80. That $80 quartz pack, probably 30% of that is going to Apple. Or again, like Google, depending on like whose marketplace you're on, right? So you got to understand that that's a gigantic chunk of money, right? So let's see, 30% would be $24, right? So you've got 24 of the $80 going over to Mr. Apple over here. And then that's going to leave them, let me do my math here real quick, $56. $56 of remaining profitability. And obviously they have costs that they have to cover. Okay, so you have no idea what their profit margin even is. Maybe their cost in something could be a little bit higher because of overhead and all this other stuff. The thing about this is a digital product and it scales with virtually no cost. The costs are actually those marketplace costs that you see baked into that transaction. So the big thing for them is not going to be that. But ask a company what they would like to earn. Would they like to earn $56? Or would they like to earn $80? Go ahead, I'll wait. Ask every company in existence which one they would prefer. And obviously that answer is going to be 80, 100 out of 100 times. Okay? So the problem that you have there is, again, that marketplace cut. This is just one of those kind of fees, one of those costs that you just understand as a retailer you're going to have to deal with. The problem is they don't want to. They would prefer not to do that if they can. And so as we begin to look at that and understand that, it makes sense then that they would rather sell you a pack at $70 rather than sell you a pack at $80 if the $80 one is on that marketplace that's taking a 30% cut. Naturally, them taking a $10 haircut or something of the sort is better because they keep $70. The end result here is still greater. So they give the actual consumer a discount, but they keep more. So it incentivizes the consumer to use their marketplace as opposed to some other third party's marketplace where they have to give 30% up. So they can offer it to you at a discount, still make more money, and appease their consumer. That's why so many of these companies want to cut out the middleman. That's exactly it. So they don't want to have to deal with those middlemen. Those middlemen are where there's a lot of value lost, a lot of margins getting shaved, and a lot of like corruption and problems. So when we look at like FGO and we look at Aniplex of America and we look at Aniplex in general and we look at Type Moon and we look at Sony, you have to consider that naturally this is something they want to do, but legally there's some problems with it. Again, challenges from the marketplaces over their terms of service and things like that. And while we have seen things like overseas that have gone a little bit more pro company and anti marketplace in that regard, here in America that stuff's still very much up in the air. So I'm wondering again, is that red tape argument, is that like there would be legal problems and legal challenges. So now they have to maintain a service, and it's less convenient in the case of FGO for consumers to have to leave a platform. That is true. And so they've done certain things to help that out. And naturally, there is that cost. I do agree. So then you start considering like, okay, well, 70 is greater than 56, but what if they now have scaled costs, a marginal cost that increases? And now instead, this $70 is now instead like, I don't know, maybe they make like 60. Well, if you have $60 versus $56, yes, there is an increase, but it's not nearly as much. And then you have a big question of the closer you creep to the actual true marketplace cost, you have to begin to wonder, how much is it worth the actual increased costs to do it versus outsourcing it? So this is the outsourcing argument. We do see this all the time. Yeah, and I was gonna say $70 is, I believe, not what they do on JP. I think it is more like a 5% discount on JP. So, and we've seen them double this. This is how we know their margins are good, because we've literally seen them be like, hey, you already had a 5% discount off the base market rate, but what if we double this and we're gonna give you an additional 5% discount during like a sale time? This means that they can absolutely eat a 10% cut without there being a problem. Because that's the way sales work. Sales are given to you to cut into margins to with the hope of producing more activity and furthering stuff. So 180 pack is $60 on any online. That may depend on your region and stuff. Like I can literally go look it up on mine. And I'll be able to tell you what it shows for me. We're probably gonna start a fight. Ba, ba, ba. I show it right now with a 5% discount. I can't read the banner because it's in Japanese. But basically it's 9,500 yen. So that's going to be whatever it like translates into. I can tell you historically that is the same as our like 160 pack, and it's meant to be it's meant to basically be the same like $80 price. But naturally due to conversion rates, that's not always the case. So that's the reason why I'm not like getting into that too much. I know they give the 5% discount, which is normal. But you guys got to think, when you're paying $80, if you consider this, would you guys rather pay $80 or again, would you rather pay $76 every time you had to do it? It's a very logical argument as to which one you guys are going to prefer. Yeah, there's definitely some like, hey, I just don't care, I'm rich, LOL, of like you just go with the $80. But yeah, like most normal sane people are just gonna say like, fuck it, yeah, it's $4. All I like to do is do it on the website instead of in the game. It's not a big deal. So that's the whole point, right? With tax, it'll be 80 anyways. Well, yeah, but then it doesn't matter if you're using the tax argument. Then with tax, the $80 is even more. So yes, that would technically make the 76.80, but it would also make the 80 even more. So tax is relatively a moot point with these things. Yeah, but my Google Play points. And that's true. That's definitely something that can be factored in, right? Like if you have a lot of Google Play points built up and you need to use them, go for it. The thing you need to ask yourself is if you look at like the amount of Google Play points you get per year and you look at them and like how many times you purchase quartz, like is that going to be more than the 5%? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. That's something that like you'd have to calculate. JP quartz are just way cheaper than US. Yeah, like I said, that's just the conversion rate. That's all that is. It's because the Japanese yen is doing so shittily right now. That's not like it's not a bearing so much on like the price of like the American quartz packs so much as it is an excoriation over the Japanese currency value. So your money goes further when you start purchasing on the Japanese side. Hayes, thank you for the big 9-0. Chat, can we get some love for Hayes' 90 months? God, I'm gonna have some people reaching 100 months soon. That is crazy to me. Like, I just never even thought I would like make it as a streamer, let alone be streaming this long. Okay, we still have that. I don't want to touch that yet, though. I've done my 5 runs of the shoe. I guess I need to do 5 runs of the gear. I thought Americans hate taxes. We do. We started our entire like war over it. Every political campaign cycle deals with taxes in one way or the other. But yes, we hate taxes. But it doesn't mean that it's not a present thing. They say there are 2 things that are inevitable in life, death and taxes. Who is the longest? You're definitely up there, Hayes. I don't know if Bovis is still subscribed. He'd probably be one of the longest. Same thing, I think, like Steve might be as well. I'd have to look. It's just one of those things of like, I have not pulled my subscriber list in a hot second, and I actually need to because Lord knows some of y'all probably been slacking. I gotta pull that at some point and take a look. I just haven't had the time. Let's have ourselves another tea party. I'm okay with that. Currently, I get 1.2 points per dollar on Google Play Gold benefits, so every pack I get to save 96 cents. Well, 5% of an $80 pack, I'm just using NA numbers here. 5% of an $80 pack would be $4, right? So my question for you, Daya, would be, is there ever a point where you get like more points? Or there's like big savings? Because yeah, your Google Play points won't matter then at that point. It's like, oh, every pack you get $1 off. Cool. Every pack you purchase online, you get $4 off. I think I would much rather save $4 exactly. But so yeah, like that's my question. Like, because aren't there like times where you get like bonus Google Play points? I feel like I remember hearing people talk about that. So that would be something to factor in. Every Friday? Okay. And to be honest, like, yeah, it'd have to be quite a bit basically to offset the $4 consistently. But maybe you always purchase on a Friday. I don't know. I don't actually hate taxes themselves. I like libraries, roads, and other public works. I hate my taxes going to pockets of a few people. I don't mind my taxes going to pockets of a few people as long as those people are using them wisely. I think the understanding, though, when you say that is that obviously they are not. Like, there's so much waste with stuff like that. And I think therein lies the problem. You can get 100 points, but you could also get struck by lightning. Ah, I see. Well, so you're telling me there's a chance. And I heard you guys like to gamble. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would rather not have to like sit there and micromanage it. I would rather just always get that 5% off. Especially because there are times that the website gives more than 5%. Like I mentioned, there are times where it'll be like, hey, here's another 5% off. So you'd get a total of like 10%. And that just is what that is. So at the end of the day, you have to say like, yeah, like how much is it going to be worth you having to sit there and like nickel and dime it just to like actually get the haircut? And to be fair, that is why they do it, chat. They offer you on purpose that benefit so that you go use their website. They want you using the website so that they get more of their cut. That is the way it is designed. They would not have the website otherwise. So we did talk about the marginal cost of running the website and everything, but at the end of the day, they've done it in such a way that it's beneficial to them to do so. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Like if it weren't going to be cost effective, they would have run the numbers and been like, well, this doesn't work. And they just never would have spent the money. I got the 100 points this week. Nice. Why doesn't the US government just use tax dollars to buy our lottery tickets? It's so funny because that's actually one of the proposed like solutions to like poverty and stuff, is to actually uh do like investments and stuff on behalf of the general populace, and to make things in such a way that like at least like kids, like I know like there are those accounts that they're trying to play around with right now, that'll be a thing where it's like your kid grows up and they already have money that's been invested and grown over time. But then there's also been like the idea of like giving out like an annual stipend and stuff to people, so basically kind of like a UBI and everything. And that's an interesting thing. I think the problem that I obviously have with something like that is that inflation exists. We all know that. Like, we've all been experiencing inflation over the past couple of years, so we are well aware that inflation is bad and it makes your money worth less. Any sort of like safety net that's going to sit there and just give everybody in the country money naturally will just devalue the currency. Period. End of story. Like, I saw somebody on Twitter the other day that was proposing that it's like, by 2032, everybody in the US should get $45,000 given to them annually. And then they were like, and then they projected that it would grow, and by as soon as 2035, everyone in the US, according to this plan, would be given $1 million. And then by, I think it was like 2037, it would grow, and everybody in the US would be getting $40 million a year. And I'm like, cool. Do you not understand how inflation works? Do you not understand that the guy trying to sell you a loaf of bread, when you make $40 million, he's going to be like, sure, I'll sell you that. It's going to be $4 million for this loaf of bread. Like, he's just going to increase the fucking price of the good. Because if everybody has that kind of money, nobody's rich then. You think you're all rich, but everybody's actually just poor. That's what sucks about inflation. But it's something to understand, that you can't just sit there and give out money and hope that it like solves everything. It won't. Is bro trying to create Venezuela or Zimbabwe? Yeah, exactly. That's the whole problem with stuff like that. Like, I am absolutely all for like finding ways to generally help people and get them out of poverty, but no, you can't just throw like cartons of cash out. Like, that's the whole problem with like a lot of like COVID stipends and stuff that happened. Is, chat, what did people do with that money? Did they go like, this is great for my rainy day fund? Or did they go like, I know, I'll invest this? Fuck no, they didn't. They're like, ooh, a PS5. No. They literally just went out and immediately spent that money. And of course. So it's like, they didn't even hold on to it. You cannot trust that anyone will hold on to that money if you start just giving it out. Stuff 1.7 trillion, yeah. I bought 2 PS5s, there you go. But that's kind of the problem that you run into with that stuff. So I've always found it very interesting the way like people try to come up with solutions to things like that. Because some of it's like, oh man, that sounds great. I would love to have $40 million a year. Give that to me. Hell yes. The problem is the only way that I'm going to have value in that $40 million is if I'm the only one that got it. If everybody else gets it too, then it has no value. We're all just $40 million richer, which means $40 million is the new poverty line. And so you have to consider, chat, like, what if you made 50 grand a year, and then someone gives you, to understand this, $40 million. And then they give it to everybody else. So now this is the sum total of your cash in that year. Man, you're a high earner. No, you're not. You're 50 grand above the poverty line, but when the poverty line is 40 million, okay, we'll open a calculator here, right? Can I? Nah, I don't remember how to do that. Anyway, yeah. Oh, that's why I was like sitting there looking for it. And I don't have the button anymore because I don't have a numpad on this particular keyboard, right? So you've got 50 grand, and like you're sitting there, and you've got 40 million being given out to everybody. Congratulations, chat. You are 0.125% over the poverty line. So you're like, fuck! That doesn't help me. Like, yeah, that's true. You're not at the poverty line, but you're damn close to it. At that point, just give everyone $1. But see, even giving everybody $1 would still have the same problem. Like, literally, inflation would go up by $1 across the board. Yeah, just make the prices going up illegal. Nothing bad will happen from that. I mean, we have laws against like price gouging and stuff. It's just that is the problem with them. Naturally, somebody's gonna find a way to take advantage. I actually held off spending money on FGO this year all the way up to the anniversary. Nice. I don't think I've spent money since the last GSSRs. Like I did the GSSR here on NA, but like I don't think I've actually spent money since like New Year's with those GSSRs. Bro didn't catch the lesson. It is what it is. If everybody is special, then nobody is special. Exactly. And it's so funny that you mentioned that, Lucas, because this is actually like this is how I was raised. I feel like nowadays everybody has the viewpoint that like I'm special. I'm so special. Oh my god, everyone needs to treat me well because I'm special. I was raised with the viewpoint of you're special and no one cares. So it's almost like there's this weird sense of entitlement nowadays with that stuff, whereas like it was like, yeah, you're special, you should feel special, but also you need to understand that everyone's special and therefore you're not unique. Nobody cares. You're special in your own way because you are your own unique individual, but everyone is that way, and it's nothing crazy. So where I see this is that like idea that like people are like trying so desperately to stand out nowadays and to be something that they're not. Whereas like I was just raised to be comfortable in my own skin and to be like, I am who I am and I need to just accept who I am. It's funny though too, because I know that I have at least a somewhat unique viewpoint because girlfriend basically compliments me on stuff like that all the time. That I don't have a very high opinion of myself. I don't sit there and think that I'm like God's gift to mankind. I don't think that like I have to be the center of attention. I don't think that like everything has to go my way or anything like that. I basically just go with the flow and try to make things work the best way that I possibly can. And I try to contribute. I try to be as important as I can be, but I just naturally understand that like nobody's necessarily going to view me as important. Everyone is special, but everyone is equally as gifted, and it doesn't matter your walk of life. Yeah, I'd say that's a good way of putting it. Like, and I think some people instead have been, I'm going to say, not necessarily taught, but they haven't been taught how to view themselves, and instead they view themselves with shame, or they feel like they're not as gifted because they haven't realized their gifts, or they feel like their gifts are unappreciated. I, for instance, did feel like that for a long period in time. I have come into my own and realizing that, no, I'm actually pretty amazing in my own right, and that there are people that do realize that in my life. But I can't expect that everyone's going to realize that because people have different things that they care about. So it's like me being good at video games or me being a decent streamer. That's something that's kind of amazing. but some people don't care. So I shouldn't go around with a big head and being like, I'm Mr. Important Streamer Man. No, obviously, nobody fucking cares. Like, to me, and it's funny because I've had people come up to me and be like, "Oh my god, your cat! I like your videos. Hey, this is so awesome." And I'm like, it's always nice to hear that. I just don't expect it ever. So I think that's why it's so nice for me to hear that stuff, because truly I never assumed that somebody has heard of me or thinks like well of me. I've seen so many people that don't think well of me over the years that I've just learned not to expect or anticipate that sort of thing. Rayless, thank you for the sub, buddy. It's also why I thank you guys every time you sub or subscribe or come to stream. It just is what it is. I understand that you guys are giving your time or your money to help support me and to be here. And I know that, you know, there's a little bit of a transactional basis here, and you guys are getting some enjoyment or information out of it as well. But I just think it is what it is, right? Like, I still am appreciative and I don't take it for granted. I've come to the conclusion that trying to obtain as many different servants is bad. I just need to focus on getting NP5 the handful I truly enjoy, especially now where NP1 is becoming less and less viable. I think it's sad, but I do kind of agree that that's the state the game's in. I still like acquiring as many as I possibly can because it gives me more fun units to play around with and more units to enhance and more things to keep me playing the game. I like playing FGO. I like having goals in the game. Not everyone's going to espouse to that idea, though. I think for me, I do recognize that shift in the game's overall like balance and strategy, and I am saddened by it. I feel like prior to 90 plus plus, we had an environment, especially post Oberon, where everybody at NP1 was good and you didn't care. Now with 90 plus plus nodes that have come into the mix post Oberon, I kind of go like, yeah, it's pretty clear that they want to give you a reason to roll for higher NP levels, whereas before it was more of an enthusiast thing. Now it's become a little bit more of a like pressure cooker thing, where they are applying pressure because it is the highest level node, and so people feel like they have to do that. It's a psychological trick, even though you truly don't. You can play the whole game and like just do 90 plus content, and whenever a 90 plus plus appears, just do it the one time for the clear objective and then not really bother with it anymore after that. But I think that pressure that having a higher level node does and puts on you is psychological, and it causes people to feel like they have to roll for higher NP levels, and therefore the game is effectively incentivizing it. And so because the game is incentivizing it, again, people are feeling like that, and they're then trying to like spend money on it. I think as I look towards the line, there's definitely account statuses. There's definitely like ages and qualifications for your account. The longer you've been playing the game, the better you've taken care of your account, the less likely you are to need any given new unit. Whereas the shorter you've played the game or the less well you've taken care of your account, the more likely you are to need new units and to need additional MP levels and things like that. Like any new unit that comes out nowadays, I do not have to roll. Period. End of story. There is like we're gonna have to have this game be out for at least another 5 years, me being completely free to play before the game could really offer something that I have to roll. The only way otherwise would be like some sort of new meta support or something, and logically you prepare for those times and you shift when that's required. But I think the more veteran you are of the game, the less you need that new unit and the less it's a requirement. Like even someone like Erd comes out, she's new, 50% charging arts support. You don't care necessarily because arts has so many options. So I think that's the other thing is now down the line we go as is each card type and each system gets more options for how to run it. It becomes less imperative to have one specific option. And so that opens up player choice, opens up variety, and allows players to be patient. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. I do feel like the best way to maximize your gains, though, short term, is to just go after a couple of key units and to make them strong. That is always going to hold true, I think, for FGO. They would need new meta support scale within P level. Yeah, they've kind of had that. That's definitely been something they've been trying to do over time, but it is what it is. Like for instance, our Castoria technically gets stronger with NP level because her ult, or sorry, not ult, her NP literally is going to give more and more attack power depending on the NP levels that you have. Naturally, it's not going to help the main primary function of that, but it's still definitely a quality of life, and we see them doing that now with subsequent ones, like even Proto Merlin. It's like she gets more charged the more copies you have, so there's incentive. Whether or not it's required, I think, is another thing entirely. I like going for a new unit rather than going for NP2 specifically because I can only afford a few servants per year. Yeah, it is what it is. I think like it's not wrong to say to isolate. It's not wrong to say to roll as many as you possibly can. I think it's just different schools of thought and different statuses of accounts and different goals. I meant as a primary function. Yeah, that would. I think they would get called out for that though if they did. Like if they actually do that, you're now in the realm of like Genshin Impact and stuff where they're heavily incentivizing getting more copies and gameplay is locked behind that. That's not a good thing. I think the FGO community will rightly call them out if they try something like that. Because I do think, at least for better or worse, the devs do try to keep the game relatively free to play friendly. I think they know that free to plays are the lifebloods of gacha games, and it's an important and imperative thing to do so. Like to cater to them. If you don't do that, you're naturally going to cause problems. The key to making money in a gacha game is to cater to the free to play players, just not too much. Instant kill resist down. Huh? Drain. Still one of the best Bond songs. Interesting. Save you. Yeah, I think people often criticize FGO's gotcha system, but FGO, I keep pointing this out, and people argue with me, and it's so funny because I've seen people argue with me on it, quit the game, and then come back to the channel like months later and be like, "Hey, oops, sorry." Like, yeah, you were right. Those other games are not as generous. It's like, yeah, I know. Oh, the cursed word is the wrong name for Artoria. Harlot? No, it's not Harlot. Actually, isn't a great gotcha system, but there are far worse ones out there that get defended for some reason. Yeah, and I agree with. Deals damage to all enemies, 100% chance to instant kill, 100% chance to instant kill all enemies on Hell Battlefield. Interesting. I know who wrote this. I can tell Avalon's writing. Uh, Interesting. Nazi still believes people don't like Rin. Yeah. To be fair, I'm sure there are people out there. Like, there's definitely and I say this, right? Like, I literally saw people today arguing on Twitter about oh, Lancer Arturia is better than OG Arturia. And someone in the comments is like, no, Caster Arturia is better than Lancer Arturia. And I'm like, chat, this is like saying, I love my wife, but when she wears that outfit, she's ugly as shit. And to some of you, that might make logical sense. I'm just simply going to say that if you don't see the problem with that statement, it would explain why you're single. Are we talking about gameplay, character, or in-lore power scaling? It's a Twitter argument. I don't think it matters. There's no context or nuance. You're right, but some of your wives are kids or MILFs. I know. I'm just saying, like, I've always found those sorts of debates really stupid, right? It's like arguing over which is the best Nero version, or like which is the best Tamamo version. I don't really see the point. You should just like all the versions to some degree. God, there's your problem. You went to Twitter. I know. Every Nero is perfect. See, and that's how I feel about every like saber face in general. So it's why like when I see people like sitting there trying to one up each other, I'm just like, y'all are just making the saber face fans look bad. That's really all it is. And it's very funny too, because I think the same thing is true of like other things and stuff. So it's like, yeah, obviously there are Saber fans out there that probably hate on Rin. Obviously there are like soccer fans out there that probably hate on Rin. Hell, there are Rin fans that hate on Rin. How do I know this? Well, chat, show of hands. Which do you guys prefer? Erish or Ishtar? And I'm not saying that you can't have a preference, but I've literally unironically seen like Erish fans just shitting on Ishtar. And I'm like, it's still fucking Ren! Two sides of the same coin! So that's the point where I start going like, yeah, I'm sure Nasu does see some of that hate and probably is like, man, people don't like her, but obviously people like Rin. Like, it's just funny to me if he actually truly believes that. Or Dare side comes out more. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not gonna fault someone for having a preference. I more or less fault people for being like nitpicky about like the other side and just being mean spirited. It's like, oh, I like this, but this is also good is the correct sentiment, as opposed to like, again, since we know that like Ishtar and Ren Ishtar and Erish are the same thing effectively, just two sides of the same coin. You're sitting there and you're like, oh, I like and prefer this, but this is also good. But then there are people that are like, I like and prefer the left side, but my right side sucks. Is the way to think about it. It's like, I don't know, it's like, it's two-faced, literally. But I think that's just a microcosm of an example of the way society works in general nowadays. We live in a society, chat. That meme, holy shit, 2 cakes, yes. Cat, if we ever got a new version of Rin, what kind of servant would we get? I have no fucking idea. And the reason I have no idea is because I don't think Nasu has any idea. They had to publicly apologize for waiting so long just to give us a different version of Ereshkigal. Because they put it off for so damn long, so I don't know. The real issue is we have too many LARPers who only know Ishtar from feet memes and do not know Rin Ereshkigal. Yeah. Yeah, I think, again, in general, the FGO community just has too many LARPers. And it's full of gatekeeping left and right. I'm of the opinion that you absolutely should gatekeep some, but there's a point where you're just going full-blown, like, Gestapo level, and you're just trying to, like, get rid of people that are legitimately fans of the series. I've definitely seen people like that. Like, it's that, like, truther bullshit of, like, oh, it's a purity test. You're not a big enough fan. You're not a pure enough fan. Only I am pure enough. Like, and that's the sort of crap where I'm just like, why do people do that, dude? Counter Guardian Tosaka, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Ascalaphus. So Ascalaphus is our newest SSR here on JP. As of the event, I'm a little bit late talking to you guys about him, and that's purely going to be because I've just not had the time. You guys know this. I haven't been able to stream as much, and that just is what it is. But taking a look at him, trying to figure out like whether or not I want to roll. There's obviously some big things to know about Ascalaphus. The thing everyone's going to be wanting to know about is the fact that this is the game's second 70% charge support here. So we have a very big potential option for charge increase added to the game now. Now with Ascalaphus being our second option on top of someone like Oberon, this means that every single unit in the game can 3-turn. Every single unit. Technically, we already had that capability thanks to the Mystic Code being in play with completing part 2. But now you don't even need that. You can do it just with a triple 70% support setup, and that's something that can work. So this is going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this unit and determining, do I need this? Is this something that I've got to have? Or is this something that I can maybe get away with? So the only way you're going to be able to do a triple 70% is if you have one of each. Ascalaphus and Oberon. If you don't have one of each, then you're going to be relegated to taking somebody else's on support for a double up, and that's still only going to get you 2, not 3 70% chargers. So it is what it is. Yeah, I definitely see a lot of people that are maybe not the biggest fan of Ascalaphus's appearance. I think the second appearance is at least a little bit better than the first, and the third is a lot better, in my opinion, than the other two. But it is the way it is. Taking a quick look at his stats overall here. He's got 12k attack. That's actually pretty damn solid. He is an alter ego. He does have only 13k HP. A little bit of a concern there, but still not bad for a 5-star. Taking a look at the rest of his attributes here. Looks like his NP charge attack rate is obnoxiously low. That's going to be a concern, if not for the fact that he does have the 70% charge. But we're going to talk about that because he does have some cooldowns that are fairly high. Taking a look at his traits here, he's got animal characteristic, divine spirit, divinity, Greek mythology male. So Penthel feast on him. Humanoid, non-hominidae servant, weak to Enema Elish. In stages 1 and 2, he's child servant. In stage 3, he's levitating and obstacle maker, which is interesting that he's not considered a child thereafter in the 3rd stage, but I digress. His deck here is going to be single buster, double arts, double quick. Definitely a little bit of a rare and weird deck. His hit counts are all above average or average. It's pretty common nowadays that we see. But the standout here is going to be the 4-hit arts and quick cards, as they are above average, and that's definitely going to be nice. Really, even his 5-hit Buster is still going to be pretty decent for what it is, but naturally he's only got the one of it. Taking a look at his skills here, his first one's going to grant party evasion for 2 times 3 turns. That's at least going to help offset that low HP threshold that he's got. He's going to gain critical stars from it, basically up to 20 at rank 10, and he's going to inflict terror status for 1 time 3 turns to all enemies. So this will kind of just help out the party on every side of the equation, and that's going to have a chance to stun enemies for each turn. And then basically he's going to reduce all enemies instant kill resistance for 3 turns and all enemies critical attack chance for 3 turns, as well as charging his own gauge by 30%. So that was a lot. The thing to know is Ominous Bird of Forewarning here, his first skill, is one that you're probably going to want to time if you're using him offensively with his NP. The reason for this is because his NP will get super effective modifiers if an enemy has instant kill resist down. Now, you could get this from another unit providing it, but naturally this will be the easiest way for him to secure it himself. So it's something that you guys will want to pay attention to in that regard. This also being a self 30% charge does open him up for some capabilities. Taking a look at his second skill, it's a lot simpler. It's just going to increase the party's arts performance for 3 turns by 20%. Not a huge steroid, but it's something. And charge the party's NP gauge by 20%. So it's a party-wide charge. It's also going to reduce all enemies' NP gauge by 1, so it is a drain effect. Definitely a nice little addition there. And then his third skill is going to be the doozy. This is going to be the Oberon-like skill out of these. So it's going to grant 1 ally gut status for 3 times 3 turns. They'll only revive with 1 HP. But that's not going to be the greatest thing in the world, and we'll explain that here in a second. To me, the nicer part is probably going to be the fact that their buff removal resistance will be increased by 100% for 3 turns, and this does not scale with the skill. So it is just guaranteed, even if you have that skill at rank 1, he will still grant somebody 100% buff removal resistance for 3 turns, which is solid and great. He's also going to increase the target's attack for 3 turns by up to 30% at rank 10, and NP damage for 3 turns by up to 20% at rank 10. He's going to then charge their gauge by 50%. So if you've been keeping tab here, this means that the target of the skill gets 50, his second skill gives the party 20, so that's 70% at minimum for 1 target. If it's on himself, then he can add in his additional 30% from the first skill, and that means he himself is a 100% charger without even something like mana loading. So it's definitely an interesting thing to see that can factor in, and you can just kind of go 0 to 100 with him without too much investment. The thing here is, yes, this is a lot of nice benefits, but it's going to have a 500% chance to grant them a delayed debuff for 3 turns, unremovable, that is a demerit. That has a 500% chance to instant kill them after 3 turns and ignores guts. So unfortunately, that guts revival of 3 times 3 turns, not going to be the best, because after 3 turns, the unit is dead. They will kill themselves. The good news is, compared to someone like Oberon, where it bricks the unit and they get a taunt on them for 3 turns, and then you hope that they die in that time period so that they get rotated out, this one actually just will rotate the unit after 3 turns. So there's a little bit more of a challenge application here, as you can kind of force this to go off and essentially rotate the party much to your advantage. So it's definitely something that I find a little bit interesting, but it will require a little bit of strategy and planning if you want to do certain things with this. And yes, as chat's pointing out, this would be something that you could potentially use to loop 3 turns with a rash, which is a big meme, but a very fun one. The problem with this is going to be that it is a 10-turn cooldown skill, and given the fact that this is an art support, yes, you can run them alongside someone like Tamamo or maybe other people that can cooldown reduce, but you're not going to be looking at like a Koyanskaya style system where this unit's just getting back to the skill regularly quickly. So it will be something where there will be a little bit of a wind up and some wait time to get back to this. And naturally, since it's going to kill people and it does ignore guts, not really going to be a whole lot of ways to keep the unit alive in that regard. Taking a look quickly at his passives, he has magic resistance A for 20%. item construction A for another 20%. And then essentially he's going to have a unique one here that gives arts performance by 10% and damage taken reduction by 200. His last one here is going to increase his own damage by 50% and his instant kill success rate by 30%, which is definitely a nice effect for him. Taking a look at his appends, obviously something like mana loading could be factored in. You might be like, well, Cad, you just said he didn't need it. He can go 0 to 100. That's true, but if you did have it, you wouldn't necessarily have to pop his middle skill turn 1 in order to get to it. Or maybe you could delay one of the other skills by basically supplementing with other support. So there's still a little bit of value with mana loading depending on what you're trying to do. His 5th skill reloading could certainly help out with his first 2 skills, but the 3rd skill, it's still on that 10 turn cooldowns. It's not going to be the biggest help there. His 3rd skill here is anti-attack or anti-caster attack damage aptitude though, and that is actually useful for an alter ego. So this is something to at least consider in that regard, that this could help you out offensively for this unit if you wish to use Ascalaphus actually offensively on his own right. So now let's take a look at his Noble Phantasm. His Noble Phantasm is an 8-hit arts AoE NP. That actually has some potential, and that's why he has such a low NP gain rate, on top of him having like 70% targeted charge baked into his kit. So they naturally don't want him to become this like absurd looping monster. That being said, you're still going to be able to brute force him. He's a unit that has 100% charge just for himself. So it is what it is. So naturally, I think that's why they kept it low, just because they didn't want him to overperform in that area since he has so many ways of getting to an NP. He's going to deal damage to all enemies with this MP. Then he has a 100% base chance to instant kill all enemies. But it doesn't stop there. If you are on the Hell battlefield, which you can find ways to provide to him, he has an additional 100% chance to instant kill all enemies. So that's going to be a stacked up 200%. And you guys can see in the notes here, this does mean that he's pretty much going to guaranteeably death proc bronze rarity units, and at least has a very good shot if you have stacked Ominous Bird of Forewarning, his first skill, of killing silver enemies as well. His overcharge effect here, though, is going to deal extra damage to enemies that have instant kill resist down status. So again, it's going to be a super effective modifier applied to the Noble Phantasm's damage. And that's why I said you're going to want to pair up his first skill with his NP if you plan on popping it off and you're not just trying to loop someone else. So let's talk really quickly here about some of the considerations of, again, this unit's supportive capability. He's not going to sit there and have the sustain that someone like a Merlin or Proto Merlin's going to have. He's not going to sit there and have the party-wide protection that even a Castoria will. While he does have it based off of his skill, he's going to need a little bit of help to get back to that or to protect the party consistently. He also, just again, does not really have healing baked into his kit in that regard. So there are some factors to consider here. Ascalaphus is mostly going to be relegated to things like, you know, niche challenge options with his 3rd skill and his ability to keep guts on his target. And then simultaneously, you're also going to see him used purely for his charge. We just described that at the beginning of how him being another 70% charge support means that you now have 2 options there, which means you can have 3 of them in the party at the same time, which allows for a lot of extra capable charge. So I do think Ascalaphus is somebody that you guys want to pay attention to. The problem that we have on JP is we do have our anniversary coming up here probably at the end of the month. Simultaneously, we're going to end up very quickly having summer on JP. So that means that you guys are going to have a whole lot of new targets that may be new and interesting that you'll want to go after. You need to ask yourself, just how important is it for you guys to roll for a new 70% charger? If you already have Oberon, obviously the need is lessened. But given the fact that he can work in tandem with Oberon's another thing. But naturally, there's not going to be a whole lot of synergy with Oberon. This would be more of a, I need to force somebody to loop that probably you have no business looping otherwise anyways. So it's definitely an interesting consideration in that regard. Taking a look at Ascalaphus's actual refund numbers, you guys can see it's actually not as terrible as you would maybe think against 3 enemies. If we're going against just any sort of like neutral enemy here, not the berserkers or the assassins, even with 0 overkill hits against 3 enemies, that's going to be 24 hits. And you're going to be looking at about 66% refund with double Castoria as the baseline here for supporting him. If we're up against berserkers with 0 hits, you're going to be at about 53, and if you're up against assassins, it's going to be 59. So definitely some things to consider there. You're not really going to be able to full 100% refund him no matter what, unless you just manage to get all overkill hits, which is just probably not going to happen outside of Fuyuki, let's be honest, because a enemy would have to be so low for those first hits just to actually trigger overkill. So at the end of the day, it's not really feasible to think that you're going to 100% refund him with just double support there. But naturally, since he himself is a support, you can throw in a third art support and try to make something like that happen. To me, it's not really necessarily worth it. With so much charge abound, you just want to do anything and everything that's going to give Ascalaphus more damage. That's going to be the big thing you'll want to try to focus on. So let's take a look at some of his charge scenarios now and kind of what we're talking about here. So we have double Castoria and Waver, where we're working from a 0% starting standpoint, but we are going to abuse a mana loading at least unlocked, not necessarily leveled up to 10, given that starting 10% charge. Same thing here, and this is against a 1-1x neutral enemy, by the way. So like your node setup being 1 enemy in the first wave, 1 enemy in the second wave, who cares how many enemies in the third wave? This just is kind of a proof of concept that Ascalaphus, even with just double Castoria Waver, can 3-turn regardless of what the node is. So as a result, we don't care too much. We can work in an Oberon if we want against a 3-3x neutral. We can work in units like Proto Merlin and Tamamo for boosting his overall damage output. So that's definitely another option. So realistically, there's so much charge here, and the refund is not terrible, strictly speaking. So you certainly could get away with supports that don't provide as much charge or refund support and instead provide more damage output. And that's going to help out his damage numbers a little bit more because of that. So what are his damage numbers actually going to look like? Ascalaphus is naturally going to be a unit that, as an alter ego, he's going to be in a little bit of a weird spot. His neutral numbers, as you guys can see here on screen, he is an SSR. You're not going to be guaranteed to be getting NP5 or anything like that like you would with a welfare. So we're looking at pretty normal numbers there for NP1 at about 27k neutral. That being said, you do have the super effective that you can get with death chance on an enemy. So certainly something you would maybe try to target in the third wave. Taking a look at his actual numbers from a damage scenario here with supports, and we can see kind of his best case scenarios looking like you're going to have about 281k there neutral damage by wave 3. With death chance, we can get that all the way up to 421, which is certainly respectable. And if we start getting NP2 or higher, we start having a lot more capability. But this is something where, yeah, I think you're really going to have to strongly consider just how badly you need Ascalaphus's kit. You're probably not going to be rolling him just purely for damage outright. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, while we can compare to Hibicika that just came out here on NA, naturally they still have a little bit of problems, but they are at least somewhat competitive with him. Same thing with Rasputin, who is a little bit more of a challenge unit. But Tiamat's just going to kind of immediately blow him out of the water, as to be expected. So if you were expecting somebody to power creep Tiamat's damage output, that was not necessarily going to be the case. And even someone like Tai Sui, who is a welfare, can still be competitive if Man Niche is in play. Even Janus Crane, who is our newer summer unit from last year, is still at least going to have certain capabilities if you do manage to have like 5 copies of her and can compete with him. So to me, the reason you're going to get Ascalaphus is not for his damage output. You're going to get him because he is an option and because you want those support capabilities that he has. That to me is going to be how he stands out and where you're going to have the most effect and fun with him. Let me know what you guys think about Ascalaphus and how you guys feel about rolling for him and whether or not you think that he's going to be somebody that everybody has to have, or instead more or less somebody that people can kind of skip and wait and see on. It's going to be one of those times where I think NA is going to be really happy about having 2 years of clairvoyance. JP has to kind of make a decision here and now. So we'll see. But obviously, at some point, there will be another banner for him in the future. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys for the next one. Okay. Chat, let me check something real fast. Okay. Kiara's in your walls watching you. That's true. We didn't do a Kiara comparison. And to be fair, chat, I ask Avalon to give me some comparisons. Avalon chooses those mostly of his own volition. There are some times that I asked Avalon to give me others, but for the most part, we don't care to compare a unit to every single unit under the sun. We just care that we have a benchmark and some kind of idea of overall performance. Because we're at the point now where there are so many units to compare against for every single option that it becomes a little bit difficult. To me, the bigger comparison is not to compare against him for damage output. Just looking at Tiamat's numbers, we know he's not the best. So, to me, it becomes more of a how useful is his kit and how badly do you feel like you need that. On looking at this, I like his kit. I like what it does. But I think this convinced me not to roll for him. I think his kit's a little too non-offensive for me. Like, I actually, if I had to come up with any sort of gripe, it's right here that his primary gimmick is the 3x 3 turns guts, and then straight up he just kills them later. Don't get me wrong, this is a nice effect. I actually really like this effect, and the fact that it forcibly rotates the party at the end of 3 turns, unlike Oberon. What I don't like is that a lot of the itemization of this skill is wasted on giving him guts when it doesn't fucking matter in 3 turns. So it does feel like this is designed for like challenge gimmicks, and as a result, I don't know that I care about that. I don't know that I care to have a gimmick that's going to kill someone in 3 turns that I need to plan around. That definitely could be really nice for like min turning and for like trying to like optimize some sort of clear for something. I'd rather just kill something straight up and not have to think about that stuff. Not have to be like, oh no, this is the worst turn for this unit to forcibly trigger death. So it is what it is. Does Oberon strip this effect with his 3rd skill, or does the instant kill still go through? I actually don't know the answer to that, but I'd be willing to bet that the instant kill still goes through. FGO support list space slowly gets filled with nothing but meta supports. Yep. Art support's eating good this year. I do agree with that, and I've seen people be like, why is Arts getting more supports? Arts doesn't need more supports. I'm like, chat, Arts is... you know what? I'm actually gonna ask. Let's take a poll before I bias everybody. Okay, 2 minutes, go. And the reason that I'm asking is because I have a sneaking suspicion that I know the answer and have always known the answer. And I did not want to bias you guys because I actually think it's my current bias, and I don't want to influence you guys if that is different. This is an obvious thing? Yeah. I can pretty much already almost guarantee that these results are the way that they are. Now, chat could pull a big, like, you want a bit, kid? And, like, try to vote counter to it. But I really, truly don't care and don't have an agenda. I just am finding it interesting the way these results are unfolding. And they're not unexpected. In fact, there's only one aspect of the current voting that is unexpected to me, and it's not super surprising. It's just I'm more surprised at the actual result. I don't know if I use Buster Arts more though, to be honest. I'm actually pretty balanced as a player. I'm dead serious. I actually do use all three card types fairly regularly. But I do happen to know that there is one that stands out for me. And let me grab my snipping tool here just so I can grab it when the poll ends, because I want to be able to show YouTube. Okay. Cat, here are your results. This is absolutely unequivocally unsurprising to me and 100% what I would predict. If you ask people what their favorite is, you will get a different response to this question. But if you ask people what they use the most, it's obviously arts. And the reason that it's obviously arts is because people just plug in arts units and just sit there just looping and not paying attention to anything. Arts is the most used because of the simplicity of the system. That's truly it. And it's not surprising in any stretch of the imagination. I am definitely not this skewed, but I am somebody that, like, I would argue if even would be 33% of each. I would argue I use arts probably 50% of the time, and then I'm probably Buster like 30% of the time and Quick 20% of the time. Now, why this is and why it's skewed towards arts for me is because there are nodes, like for instance, when I'm doing the freaking strengthening quests, that I just sit there and I plug in an arts comp, I plug in a looper, and I don't change it as I knock out like 20, 30, 40 repetitive nodes. That's why arts gets used more than any other, because I just don't change the comp and just keep doing it. Otherwise, if we factor out those times, it truly probably is like a pretty even split between arts and Buster. And then Quick is a third, a distant third, but it's not terribly so. Like, I probably use Quick more than the average person does. But yeah, I think the only thing that was surprising to me is that there was at least 14% of you that do use Quick the most. And that's probably due to like unit favoritism. If I had to bet, like your favorite unit is a Quick unit, and so you use it the most. But Quick has come a long way. I'm actually surprised that Quick was even that much. I expected it was going to probably be like 95% arts and Buster. So Quick outperformed my expectations here, but it's not surprising to me that arts ran away with it. I just didn't vote, but Quick's still my least. Yeah. And I'm not trying to like use this to push some agenda. I'm just merely trying to point out that arts has so many options. People use it the most. The devs know that. So the devs keep pumping out arts options. One, because obviously that appeases people that use arts the most. But two is also because, oh, what's the matter? Are you bond capped on your arts support? Better roll a new one, tee-hee. Like, that's exactly what the devs do, and we know that. So that's not a crazy like thing to assume. Another HSR collab? I don't know. If it's 90 plus plus, it's usually Arts or Buster for me. Other than that, I use Quick for farming. I feel like of these, and there's another inherent bias here. There's two things. So one is the bias of what is the best in case of failure. Sorry, I know that doesn't look like an eye. There you go. And the other is what is the best if I don't know the node structure. These two biases influence a lot of predominant choice towards Buster and Arts. Arts is the best if you feel like you're going to fail. Because you just sit there and go like, well, I'm just going to have the ability to keep doing it again. I'm not going to 3-turn, but oh well, I'll get the node clear. So it's good for exploring nodes in that regard. 2 is Buster, because we don't know how much charge we need. We don't know how many enemies there are, but we're just going to load up a high-octane AoE Buster unit and nuke the node as hard as we can. So 1 and 2 get predominantly forced to be Arts and Buster. Doesn't mean that you can't use Quick in these instances, but players have that bias. They know it. And so a lot of the times for going into an unknown node, players lead with one of those two card types because of it. I've been using Omisan in an Arts loop. She's so good. I need to get mine on JP online. I haven't really yet. Picking a support for my Buster DPS, I'm picking Castoria because spread 30 and NP gain. I mean, yeah, that's definitely something you can do. Quick has been a lot of my most recent pulls, so I've been using them. Utility is only 50% of my pull choice. The other is 50% is rule of cool. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, I'm not trying to like sit here and knock people that are using Quick or something like that, or trying to be like, oh yeah, Arts is better than Buster, or Arts is better than Quick. Like, I'm merely stating that these are the results, and these are why I think they are the way that they are. The card types are good, and every card type, I would argue, is in a better spot than it was a couple years ago. Like, each card type has gotten far more options. Each card type is far more viable and valuable than it used to be. That being said, people have built their accounts around certain units. People have certain biases, and it is what it is. Castoria is flexible enough to carry the team to a potential second buff cycle. Yeah, I do think that's a thing as well. Like we've talked about the ability to have like sustain or invincibility comps and stuff like that, and I think it's pretty obvious as to why. Favor Jill's supremacy. Yeah. I think Quick has come a long way. I think like there are so many options now for Quick that are at least like hybridized. So what I mean when I say hybridized, I mean they're a flexible unit, kind of like Ascalaphus is. Ascalaphus is clearly a support unit that can also be an offensive unit if you want him to be. And I feel like that's something that Quick made popular. And we started seeing it trickle into Buster and then Arts later on as well. But it used to be that, like, if you were a support, you were a support, and that's pretty much all you did. There were obviously some, units that still had an offensive NP, but you just barely ever used it. But we started to see that be more and more of a thing now, with them trying to find alternate solutions to the Quick issue, and it not working. And then now they've kind of recircled their bases and tried to force things to be like conventional with Quick. Sometimes challenge quest outlaw card types. Yeah, and I would say not even outlaw, they incentivize certain card types probably is the more often one that we encounter. And that's where I've always been a proponent of, you guys should build your accounts And I do think early on in your account's history, you should pick one of the three card types and you should specialize in it, depending on your supports. But the goal should be that you eventually build every single card type. At least a functioning system for every single card type. That way you can adapt to any situation. That way the game can't throw anything at you that you can't handle. That's always been my mentality when coaching you guys as to like how to build your accounts and stuff. Like, yeah, start out, try to get yourself into a good spot, but then from there, build out, build your variety, build your capability. A serious note, I'm beating a dead horse into beyond the grave. Where's my Tammy buff? I do think it's interesting because at least Ascalaphus is certainly going to have yet another like sort of hit against Tamamo here with the ability to drain. It's definitely weird. You guys know, I feel like the Tammy buff is one of the most talked about things for me, so I'm sure at some point it's going to happen. Like, enough people complaining, you're going to hear about it. And you guys complain constantly on my stream. I'm sure that that is not unique to me. I'm sure that that is something that is getting complained all over Twitter, getting complained in other people's stuff, and it is what it is. So, it's like, is Tamamo eventually going to get a buff? I'm going to say yes. Like, there's no reason that they wouldn't. But should it have taken this long? I don't know. Is it a problem? I don't know. I feel like we're just at this point of there are so many options for arts, you don't need to use Tamamo. And I think that's where, if you're a Tamamo fan, you probably want a future where Tamamo has to be used. But I don't think that's a thing anymore. I think the closest thing anyone has to a unit that has to be used is Castoria, and I think the devs will never do that again. I think they know that that's like, ooh, we kind of made that unit a little bit too good, and I do see them trying to dilute that some. So it doesn't mean that Tamamo won't get a buff. I'm sure she will, but I don't think it's necessarily going to make Tamamo the most meta character ever or anything like that. I tend to go for general damage supports like grinds. If you're on an A, I can understand that. JP, I very rarely do now. Like, Waver, I'd still say is good. Reigns is also one of those supports that I'm almost at the point of saying like she could use another buff, which is kind of crazy. But it's a similar problem of I'm really just not sure what the devs want to do with Reigns. I'm not sure what her identity is. And that's where it's like with Waver, we knew what his identity was. He was Mr. General, Mr. Permanent, Mr. Applicable for everything type unit. He was not the best at anything, but he was not bad at anything, really. And we knew that if they buffed him, they were probably going to either pigeonhole him towards one side of the equation. Like people had theorized them giving him like 50% quick up or something to pigeonhole him into the quick support so that he benefited quick more because quick needed another option. Or people were saying, hey, they're going to give him a generalistic buff that helps him stand out. And that is kind of what I figured they would do. And that is exactly what they did. They ended up buffing his first skill so that now he has overcharge on it. And that is a game changer for him if you're using certain units. It doesn't mean he's the meta unit for everything, but it does mean that he's a decent option now. Thank you, Steve. Buster would have made more sense if anything, IMO. Yeah. It's just one of those things where I think people were desperate to see Quick get some more options. So I don't fault anyone for thinking that that was a possibility. If I don't want to think about the node, I just use Summer Ibuki. Yeah, I think it's what a lot of people do. I think there's all this talk about, like, elaborate setups and multiple damage dealers and, like, subbing people out with Qingong or Kuro Summer or something like that. And while these are all things that you can do, people are inherently lazy and they just don't do that. They will naturally result resort to the easy option if they just don't want to be asked. I can do all QAB comps. It's just me choosing who to bond whale problems. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much me too. It's like, there's still some 90 plus plus nodes on JP that I encounter where I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do here. And then I still find a solution. And worst case scenario, if I really hated it, I would just step down to the 90 plus, which has happened once or twice, but. God forbid you have to look at Tiamat and P. My comp's very wildly. Yeah, and I think that's the same thing for me, too. I think it's one of the reasons that I use the card types at least somewhat balanced is purely because that's a thing. Units like Summer Ibuki are so strong AoE Zerker with 50% charger and great steroids, easy solution 99% of the time. Yep. Yep. And that's why, if you guys remember when I was doing the free-to-play account, I made it my priority to attach on to certain units because I knew that they were just Swiss Army knives and they were good. Like, you guys saw, I got really lucky. I got Summer Castoria and managed to effectively just carve up every boss that I encountered thanks to it. So, naturally, that's something that you want as a player, is you want an easy solution at first. From there, you can try to diversify and get more options that'll help you out, but it's not a big deal. Zerkari will just shit on things. Yep. Huh. Now, chat, I did want to talk about this. You guys have seen, again, a lot of the news here of late of like basically the layoffs and stuff that are drastically impacting the gaming sphere of things. And I find that this is a very intriguing thing. We were talking about it quite a bit in VIP earlier, and it's something that I just wanted to like talk about with you guys. Because on one hand, I feel like there are so many layoffs happening that I don't know about you guys, but it's like I'm almost becoming desensitized to the news of it. It's like you just keep hearing news like, oh, so and so lost 50 people, so and so lost 300 people, so and so had 3,000 people. And that's awful, but it's like it's happening so often that there's just almost no way to keep track at this point. But I did want to give a shout out at least to Id here, who did come out and tried to clarify what happened in their particular case, because I know there were a lot of people that were worried about id kind of losing stuff, because I do think while Doom the Dark Ages hasn't been their best offering, that they at least have been a pretty quality producer of games over the past decade, and they're certainly not one of those companies that we would look at and say like, oh yeah, they've done a shit job. They need, like a bunch of them need to get the axe. They're not doing what they need to be doing. If anything, I'd say like, no, they seem to at least be trying and still have their head in the game. So they came out and they clarified and they said, thank you all for the support this week. While our studio was impacted, those changes were spread across teams. We still have the crew we need to build games and tech we're known for, and the team today is about the same size we were when we were making Doom 2016. We have always had a flat studio where everyone is a maker, and we will remain true to that philosophy moving forward. We are focused on supporting each other and the team members impacted. We're going to keep building the great games and tech that have defined us for the past 35 years, and we're looking forward to seeing you at QuakeCon this August. This is an interesting statement, no matter how you look at it, because I've definitely seen some people criticize it, and I think there is at least a fair criticism of this, and that's that it's pretty obvious that at least part of this is an HR thing where I don't know if Microsoft and the greater Xbox brand said, "Hey, id, say something," and they're like poking them with a stick, or just in general, management felt the need to come out and clarify because they were getting a lot of bad publicity. Either way, it's definitely interesting that they came out and made a statement. I have seen some people criticize about the fact that they're saying that they grew from their success and they're now back down to the same size they were when they were making Doom 2016. And I did want to talk about this because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that view this as a negative thing. I need you guys to understand something. We've seen a trend with game studios now over the past couple of years that they have success, and that success goes to their head. They start hiring a bunch more people. They start, purchasing satellite studios and other campuses and locations, and they start growing, and it doesn't help them. Because there's this thing called Parkinson's Law that basically dictates that when you have work and you have people that need to do the work, let's say you have something that takes 2 people to do it, and then one of those people is just kind of a deadbeat. The person that remains is going to complain. They're still competent, they're still doing their job, unlike the other person. Management doesn't know what to do, and they go and they ask. And because workers just in general try to save face and are not going to be mean-spirited to each other, they're not going to sit there and be like, you need to fire that guy. Instead, they're going to be like, look, we don't have the manpower. We can't meet the deadline. We can't do the thing that you want us to do. You need to hire another person. And management goes, okay, they've told us we need to hire another person. Let's hire another person. And they don't look into it. And what this creates is bloat. Because the problem that you have is as another person sits there and sees that and they come into the project, and now you have 3 people doing a project that only 2 people were required. Well, of those 2 that are trying to work, the new guy and the old guy, you still have the 3rd guy that's loafing about and not doing his job and kind of just taking advantage of the system. So then another guy ends up getting kind of peeved about this. He's not getting the raise that he wants. He's not getting the promotion that he wants. He's stuck working with this idiot, and he sees this idiot not getting fired. So when management comes back and is like, hey, we hired another person, why aren't you guys getting the job done? Well, it's because we need another person. And this just keeps going on. And we keep hiring more people, and you keep getting people that are working half as hard for the same amount of work and the same amount of pay that they're getting, and the project becomes more bloated, more cumbersome, but doesn't actually get more efficient. It doesn't actually reach its end goal any faster. And so this is that idea that this happens. You also have this in upper management, as they will be like, hey, we need someone to be in charge of this new idea, and that person, for their job security, is going to go like, yeah, and I need a team that works under me, or I need these other people to help me out. And then now there's an entire extra team or department there that didn't necessarily need to be there, or is way overstated, way over bloated for the way it needs to be. This happens. This is not something that's unique to tech. This happens everywhere, in every corporation, and especially as they grow and especially as they get more successful, you see this bloat that begins to occur, and they're not as nimble or as efficient as they used to be, and they become monolithic, they become meandering, they become lethargic in how they operate. And so, again, I see people attacking id for this and saying hey, look, it's not a good thing that they're back down to the size they were at with Doom. And it's I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. I do agree that there's maybe some concern there, but I don't think just because they trimmed some of that fat that it's necessarily a bad thing. I think the problem that we have is we know for a fact whenever these layoffs are done, they're kind of just haircuts. The management comes in and says, you gotta fire 5% of your staff, or you gotta fire 10% of your staff. and it just happens. And so some of what happens is internal office politics, some of it is just necessity being pushed from on high, and some of it is legitimately people with agendas. And so some of the people that should be fired do get fired. But some of the people that shouldn't be fired also get fired. And some of the people that should be fired don't get fired. And this is the problem that we have, is as this happens over and over again over time to these, especially these AAA studios, you see a lot of talent leave. Some of the people that shouldn't have gotten fired but did, that's a loss of brain power, of good creative talent and capability. And that's why I think you see some of these indie studios still popping off to this day. Some of them are legitimately comprised of industry veterans. And so no matter how much these major publishers want to gobble up every studio, they can't possibly actually control the entire marketplace and actually create a stranglehold, because the more they're trying to squeeze, the more the talent's like basically slipping out. And it's going elsewhere, and it's doing other things. And that's why you have studios out there like Larian that are still able to produce a quality project. Or again, like the studio that worked on Expedition 33, that's all comprised of former Ubisoft devs. That's a fumble of catastrophic proportions on Ubisoft's part, because literally you have all that talent that could have been at your studio, could have made that multi-million-dollar generating game for you at a very low cost, but instead they couldn't. And that, I think, is part of the problem. If Expedition 33 had been made at Ubisoft, it would have taken twice as long to make, and it would have cost 4 times as much at least. That's the problem that we have with the AAA studios. So if AAA studios are trying to get rid of some of, like, you know, the extra HR people that they don't need, or the marketing people that they don't need, this is something that I don't think is the worst thing in the world. Especially when you start looking at the way that Microsoft is structured. We did at least hear, and I think we can take this at somewhat face value, that some of these studios, some of these instances that they looked at, Xbox realized that there were 14 layers of management. And 14 is a lot, chat. That's not just let me go ask my boss. That is let me go ask my boss's boss, his boss, his boss, his boss, her boss. You keep going, right? And the problem that you have is that this is done so many times that it's like, you want approval for this? You want the okay to do this? You're just seeking for, like, some sort of oversight. It's like, you don't know how many layers, how many approvals you have to get. And it's just got to be a logistical nightmare at that point. And you probably have a little bit of a case of too many chiefs, not enough Indians, where effectively you end up having, like, oh, I now have to answer to my, like, producer at Bethesda, but also I have to answer to the ZeniMax producer. But also I have to answer to the Xbox producer. And then, oh, now we're having a special visit from some Microsoft executive today that I have to, like, cart around the office or some shit. Like, you never know, but it's gotta be a problem at that point where you clearly are going to need to consolidate, clearly going to need to streamline things. You can't have 14 layers of management to make a decision. That's insane. That's crazy. So they've got to get it down. And she said they wanted to get it down to about 3 layers. I don't think that's going to happen without getting rid of the autonomy of some of these studios. And if you get rid of the autonomy of these studios, you're going to lose their identity. That's going to be a problem. Instead, you're going to have Studio id working on a racing game, or Bethesda producing a shooter instead of, like, an RPG. So this is where I don't think it's necessarily going to be the best thing in the world to have happen. We do see this in some cases in other parts of the industry, but I don't think those are good most of the time when they happen. It's one thing if the studio chooses to take on that role. It's another thing when their parent company and their publisher forces them to, and they get them outside of the realm of what they're used to. So this is an interesting thing, and I think it gives us a little bit of an insight into what's going on. There's been a lot of news circling, but yeah, I can't say that this is necessarily bad. We're just going to have to see over time, like, are the people that are getting fired, were they truly extra and we did not need them and they're just getting rid of layers of like middle management and stuff? Or are we actually losing some of the truly creative and ultimately people that were responsible for the games that we love? I think only time's going to tell, and we're just going to have to see the way this unfolds. But this could either be good and like something that could help the industry, or it could be something that could be catastrophic and end up just truly gutting Xbox and Microsoft's capability to produce quality games. We'll just have to see. So let me know what you guys think about that one. That mini god, yeah, it's kind of crazy. Well, and we were just talking about this. I think let me see if I can find it. That's not what I was looking for. There was another one. Well, that was a meme, but just for reference as to what I'm looking at right now, chat. If you know, you know. Yeah, it was basically Yoko Taro a couple months ago said that like a lot of his projects just keep getting canceled. And it's like, I don't know if that's like Sony is trying to put him on other things, or it's just like side stuff that he himself is working on and canceling himself. I don't know, but it's like some part of me thinks that like these parent companies are actually just sitting there and like trying to order them around, and it's just not working. Like I know for a fact, if we were to look at Bethesda, there's been interviews that have been done that like one of the problems with Starfield was that Todd Howard was ultimately the final say on everything, but because Bethesda has grown so much, Bethesda has like 4 different campuses, and Todd Howard's always jet setting between them. So if you needed an answer from Todd Howard on something, you couldn't get it. Todd Howard basically was not around, and so there were points where yeah, they would have to wait until they got a response, but there were other points where they would just have to say, you know what, it is what it is. We're just gonna have to do this without Todd's approval. So I think that's part of the reason that Starfield ended up the way that it did. And I still think Starfield, as its base bones, is a good game, but it's obviously lacking a lot of soul that it needs to be a truly great game. So it makes me wonder, like, are some of our true creatives, like, they've now gotten promoted beyond and they're just being spread too thin? If you guys are familiar with Final Fantasy 14, we had Yoshi P get pulled off of his small group to basically head up and direct Final Fantasy 16. And while I do think 16 is the best like single player offering that the Final Fantasy series has had in a long time, it still has its problems. And I think as we look at that, we go like, yeah, maybe the problem is that he's just spread too thin and they didn't have enough time to actually develop it and do what they wanted to do with it properly. So I really wonder, like, is this just a problem with like the shareholders and the board dictating so much the schedule and when things are coming out and how things are getting done? Or is it just a case of like, hey, the people truly don't have the time or the funding to do what they want to do? Or is it maybe a case of like, there's so much bloat that, again, if we look at Expedition 33 as the example, something that they would want to do in 2 years ends up taking them 5 or 6. And you start going like, oh man, like why is it taking that long? And it's because they have too many people working on the same thing and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Sony probably wants him to be working on X, but Taro doesn't want to do it, and Sony doesn't like what he's trying to work on and cancels them, if I had to guess. Yeah, and that makes me wonder. Hey, Tutu, how's it going? So much that goes into any decision that influences. Yep. Where did my... Oh, that's so weird. I did see there was a lot of, like, hullabaloo about Black Flag as well. Resynced just came out, I believe, today. Or was that yesterday? Looks like yesterday. Maybe it was yesterday at midnight or something. And at first it came out and it was getting review bombed. But I guess it has since rebounded and it's doing okay. And there's still a lot of people that are wanting to play it. For me, I think my biggest issue with this is purely just the price point. It is a remake of a old game, but I have seen side-by-side comparisons where truly the graphics are not necessarily as good as people think them to be because modern graphics are a little bit of a joke. But also at the same time, I just kind of, like, I still have my copy of Black Flag. I don't want to play it. And this brings us back to that centralized issue of, like, physical copies of games. And this is exactly why Sony doesn't want you having that. Sony doesn't want you to actually own your games and own your content, is because they can't resell it to you then. If you can just boot up your old PS2 or PS3 and pop the game in and play it, you don't have a need necessarily to buy the new one. And what they want is they want the ability to keep recashing in on their old IPs. We actually see this in other media industries over time. If you guys can remember the like movie industry where we had like VHS, we had like DVD, and then we had Blu-ray, and there were instances where people bought a movie on VHS, then bought it again on DVD, and then bought it again on Blu-ray. That's exactly what video game developers want. They want it where every time there's a new console, every time there's a new jump in technology, you have to repurchase to get it on the best thing. And to some degree, if you're an enthusiast, okay, that's not a bad thing. But to another degree, it's like, guys, you're just porting it. And like, for most of these games, they don't do a full remake. In this case, they did, but for most of them, it's like they just basically upscale it and then go, please pay us more money. And it's like, if that's all you did, that should be a free update. That shouldn't be something that we have to like spend a butt ton of money on. It's going to generate more sales for the base game regardless, but we shouldn't have to pay full modern pricing for something like that. If you're going to completely remake a game, I can at least understand it some, but you got to understand that it's going to play a lot better if you go the route of like the Oblivion remake where you say, hey, this is an older game. We're going to price it at the price it was back then rather than the price it should and would go for today. I think that's the problem that we see over time now, is that these companies are getting greedier and greedier with how they do it. But as we mentioned before, one of the reasons that Sony is trying to go away from physical media is Sony wants everything to be digital so that they can cut out the middleman. They don't have to sell on another marketplace. They don't have to give Steam, give Apple, give Google, or give like GameStop, even like a physical retailer, any of their money. They just do it all on their own site and make all the money there. And part of the reason for this is I think they see the way that Nintendo has operated. That's exactly the model that Nintendo uses. I've seen people that are like flabbergasted by this, and it's like Nintendo doesn't sell any of their games on Steam. Simultaneously, Nintendo allows you to buy everything in their own ecosystem and marketplace. And at best, or sorry, at worst, I guess you could say, they will sell things in a physical store. That's it. The physical store is the only way they lose any actual like value. And otherwise, it's all happening in their own internal marketplaces, and they're getting full cuts of everything. So when they sell that game for $70, they're getting the full $70, as opposed to like when Sony tries to sell it at GameStop and GameStop takes 30% of that cut. They're just kind of screwed. At that point, they're losing $21 to GameStop and not able to get a whole lot out of it. Going full digital will defeat the purpose of buying the game over and over again. Yep. And this is why Sony has tried to quietly get rid of, like, oh, did you purchase this back for PlayStation 3? Yeah, you don't own it. Oops, the license lapsed. They actually have it in their terms of service. I think it's like towards the end of their terms of service that even though they use the terms like purchase and sale and things like that, that it doesn't actually constitute ownership. If anything, you are buying a temporary license. And I'm of the opinion where it's like, okay, that's fair. But here's what I want. If we are not owning the item, why am I paying the price that I'm paying? Because I'm paying for a rental. I should only be paying like $5, $10. That's the way I view it. If I don't own this game and you can revoke it at any time, or I go play your multiplayer and you go, I don't like the way you're playing my multiplayer, I'm revoking your access. Okay, you have that right. Revoke my access. But that better be because I just rented your game. Because you're telling me I don't own it. And if you're going to say that I don't own it and I don't have that consumer right of this is my copy, I can do with it what I want, then I should be able to pay a lot less than what I'm currently paying. And that is partially what these developers are trying to do. They're trying to get everybody on this subscription model service. They want you on PlayStation Plus or, again, like Xbox Game Pass. And you're just on the hook constantly for them. The problem with this is players rightfully see the scam that is, and they don't want to give you that money. So I think when we start to look at this, we start to realize that that's really all it is. It's just a revenue generating scam from these people, and it's not worth it. Game Pass would absolutely be worth it if it weren't originally designed to be a pyramid scheme. They sold developers on the lie that they were going to get more money by selling their games on Game Pass, and if anything, it was the reverse. And you need to only look at the actual profitability of it. If I pay you $15 for a Game Pass subscription, and this is the old subscription price, I know it's gone up since then, but it's like if I pay you $15 for a Game Pass subscription for a month, or I buy your game outright at $70, which do you think earns the developer more money? Like, I can't believe Xbox got away with this. I can't believe developers were stupid enough to sell their game on Game Pass. Of course you fucking make more money on the $70 option. Even with Steam taking a 30% cut, that's $21 off of this right here. You are still making $49. Guess what that's more than? 15. So one of the ways that Microsoft marketed it as is like, oh yeah, but like every time someone downloads your game, you're going to get a cut of the total Game Pass earnings from subscriptions for that month. And while assuredly they did, and while Game Pass did front a lot of the money for the development of these games, it's not enough. It's definitely not paying for it in the end and not recuperating it, especially when a lot of players would like to directly support the developer and feel like the developer is owed at least some kind of money. I think there's this idea that piracy is rampant in the gaming industry and that gamers don't want to pay for things, where we see this over time. The trend is always that a consumer will pay for something if they feel like they're getting their money's worth. They will support people that are actually consumer oriented and minded. And we see this with Steam. There's all these accusations that Steam is a monopoly, and Steam is a monopoly by consumer choice, not by Steam trying to kill off its competitors. It's not sitting there doing the like Walmart tactic of like underpricing the mom and pop stores to drive them out of business. Steam just offers at what they want to offer it, and they just have a rule that says whatever you put your product up on Steam has to match whatever you put it elsewhere. So if you sell your game for $50 somewhere else, you can't mark it up on Steam. It's an anti Steam rule where they're just trying to stop you from taking advantage of them, not trying to stop you from selling your game. So it's really weird because obviously if everyone whines about Steam taking a 30% cut and you want to sell your game elsewhere, you're more than capable of selling your game elsewhere. And this is where the truth really comes out. It's like, you want to sell your game on your own marketplace where there is no cut? Yeah, sure, you'll get $70. The problem is, and what pisses people off, is the majority of people will purchase their game on Steam and then they get less of a cut. Regardless of the fact that they can sell it on their own marketplace and get the full cut, players value the fact that Steam is pro-consumer and choose it outright overwhelmingly. Why do they? Because every one of these other publishers is just scummy, and it's been proven time and time again. So naturally, when you look at this, you can see why consumers choose Steam. And then you notice it's like, oh, well, they want the publishers want you to be on their subscription model, but it doesn't work because players rightfully see it for what it is. It's a hose job, and they maybe pay for like $15 for 1 month to try your $70 slop game out, and then they cancel it right away so that they don't have to. Ubisoft has a service for that, and that's exactly what people do. And they think that somehow they're gonna make it big and get everybody on their subscription service. They're not. If PlayStation starts to try to do this and starts to try to get everybody onto their subscription service and just kill off all physical media, it's just going to make people play PlayStation games less. It's not going to have the effect that they think it will have. It's really weird because we just got done with an entire generation where Xbox fumbled the bag and had no idea what they were doing. And it's so hilarious to watch as now Xbox is trying to revert back to their old form, and PlayStation is now committing Sudoku and just trying to actually, fumble the bag on their end as well. So I don't know what needs to get through to these people, but dear Lord, it's like, just take the Steam model. What does Steam do? Nothing. And it wins. They keep trying to find their new get-rich-quick schemes, and it just does not work. Did you see the recent news about the Xbox CEO? Yeah, that she got put on the advisory council for, what was it, the H-1B visas or whatever. I'm not sure that's a great idea because there's a lot of news circulating that part of the layoffs are to replace people with H-1Bs. I think that's a smear campaign. I don't think that's necessarily true, but if there's even a shred of truth in that news, absolutely she is not someone that should be on that council. But we'll just have to see. Nintendo is looking the best just by being the least bad right now. Oh yeah, but if you remember back to when they announced the Switch 2, a lot of people rightfully called that out for just being like really scummy on their part. It's like, hey, we're re-releasing the same thing as the Switch, just slightly better. We've upped the price. We haven't actually made the Joy-Cons better, and we want you to pay us just more money. Yeah, Nintendo trying to get you to pay $80 for their games is just stupid. So we're at the point of none of these publishers is good. It's just who is the least bad. And for me, Steam is the least bad by far. And it's still like we could still criticize like the Steam machine release and stuff like that, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's like adopt the Gaben model of just do nothing and profit. Like you have the option of being super greedy and getting punished for it, or just doing nothing, and they keep choosing the super greedy option, hoping that this time it'll work and the gamers won't realize we'll pull one over on them. It never works. It's never going to work. They don't understand that. The company that succeeds is always the pro-consumer company. That is the thing that holds up over time, over and over and over again. We're not as dumb as they think we are, yeah. The game went on sale. I reached out to chat service and they refunded me so I could buy it at a lower price. Yeah, like there's all the jokes about like, oh, hey, Steam support, help me. Somebody stole my account password or something. And it's like, hold on, let me get that for you. And you hear gunshots in the background as like the Steam support person goes on a like house raid to like invade and get your account back on behalf of you. And it's like, obviously that's a meme, but the reason that's a meme is because that is the length that people feel like Steam will go to help the consumer. Like there's so many times that Steam has protected us from scams in the gaming industry, and it's not going to stop. And that's the great part. I think the big concern is obviously what happens if Gaben decides to retire, or like heaven forbid like he dies prematurely or something, right? Like, but we do at least know from his own comments that he's already setting things into place to make sure that like the company is well maintained and taken care of after he chooses to like move on. And to be clear, Gaben hasn't been like running Steam for a while. That's not his primary thing. He does let people that he trusts handle it. I think the biggest thing, and you guys can agree or disagree here, but I think the biggest thing that works in Steam's favor is that it is not a publicly traded company. Because it is not a publicly traded company, its shareholders are all internal, and it's not a big deal. As opposed to, hey, you're a publicly traded company, now you have to have all this BS rules oversight, now you're beholden to all these governments, now you have to do everything to keep increasing shareholder value and doing all this scummy stuff to try to take advantage of your consumers. So the fact that they're a privately traded company, I hope that is what is maintained. I feel like if when Gaben truly passes the torch and is done or is gone, as long as Steam can be kept a privately held company, the company will not, like, I'm not going to say it'll be perfect, but it will not become the, like, greedy epitome of corruption that we see with every other publisher. Do I need to stream on Twitch to use Streamlabs? I mean, it wouldn't have to be on Twitch, but you would need to stream something to use Streamlabs. Everyone else sank their bars lower. Yeah. I found when I got into PC gaming, people were praising Gabe as a god. I think it's because we already, like, before Steam, we saw the corruption coming a mile away. We saw the greed. We knew where all of this is going. If you guys think that, like, there weren't, like, greedy developers and publishers 20 years ago... Yeah, no, that was the thing. Okay, absolutely they've been trying to take advantage of us for a long time. Steam was a monumental success. And it doesn't mean that Steam hasn't made some boneheaded issues. Like, there's a lot of people that blame Steam for the rise of DLC. They say that Steam is the one that kind of invented that. That's not Steam's fault. Steam just is the first to take advantage of it. let's be real. If Steam didn't do it, Nintendo would have done it. If Nintendo didn't do it, Microsoft would have done it. If Microsoft didn't do it, Sega would have done it. If Sega didn't, like, it doesn't matter. Someone would have come up with these ideas eventually. Steam was just the first to do it. And ironically, Steam hasn't really done it that bad compared to some of the other egregious examples we've seen of it. So, yeah, DLC was going to be a thing regardless anyways, because the industry wanted a solution to these boom and bust cycles of selling your game, and maybe if it's good enough, you release an expansion for it. That's not enough to keep the lights on, and that forced a lot of these developers to have to go get funding. The hilarity is we have all these live service models and stuff for production, and we still see that sort of thing happening. We still see developers trying to find extra investment. That's why you have these companies like BlackRock and stuff coming in and actually investing in gaming studios, like venture capitalists and stuff. It's because it's an investment for them. They know, and these companies want it so that they can fund an even bigger project. Like, chat, if I can make a game for $5 million, but then I can get 50 million more from just talking to BlackRock and them setting out some goals. Well, that's a $50 million better game that I can make. At least that's the way they think, right? Like, whether or not it's actually true, I think, you know, we just got done talking about Parkinson's Law and how there's just an inevitable bloat. But I think looking at that, it's like, yeah, it's a no-brainer as to why they take it. It's not necessarily that they need the investment. It's that investment means bigger and better means more money. Money! That's literally their mentality. So, that's why. Indian curry, nice. I haven't had curry in a hot second. I need to have some soon. Sega's already having unreal expectations for the next games. I mean, that is what it is. Public companies have to act to increase profits for their shareholders, aka greed. Which is so funny because I'm somebody that's obviously like a business major with my degree and everything, and it's like the way I was taught in schools that you're supposed to like boards are supposed to be good stewards of their company, and so many boards now have this just short-term approach. Whereas it's like, you need to stop betting the farm on this get-rich-quick scheme that potentially puts the entire company at risk. You need to instead go, hey, we need to achieve good growth, but not at the expense of the brand. As good as it is, that's bad parts? Yeah, naturally. And there's a lot of, like, economic theory. There's a lot of, like, you know, obviously politics and stuff, but we don't need to get into that. Beginning of the video game industry, yep. They forget long-term is an option, yeah. They're only concerned with their own golden parachute and their own incentives and things like that. Chat, I'm actually gonna end early tonight. Part of the reason why I'm actually I told you guys this at the beginning of the stream, I am still not feeling the best. So we're gonna send you guys somewhere else. I should be back tomorrow. I don't know what we'll be streaming tomorrow. But thank you guys for being here tonight. I do appreciate the support as always. I'm just looking to see who else is on. I'm going to send you guys over to Miss Ivy on tonight. Again, I hope you guys have a good one. Go give Miss Ivy my love. I will see you guys later.